Good morning once again, everyone. I'm very thankful that you all could join me. I would like to go over now. Let's pick up a Bible study in 1st and 2nd Samuel. So much happens in these chapters. But 1st Samuel follows the book of Ruth, which we've already went over. And it's appropriate because Ruth and Boaz, of course, are the great grandparents of King David. And we are about to see David come upon the scene in the book of 1 Samuel. But it starts out like this. Now there was a certain man of Ramothaim Zophim of Mount Ephraim, and his name was Elkanah, the son of Jeroham, and the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, the son of Zuph, and Ephrathite. We know for a fact that Zuph was a Levite. So even though it says that he is an Ephrathite, talking about Elkanah, Hannah's husband, even though it does say that he's an Ephrathite, all that means is that he comes from a small Levitical town within the land of Ephraim. And as you might can see right here, we have the land of Ephraim, and then you have the land of Dan, and right here's Shiloh, which is going to be a lot of the point of focus, especially in this very first chapter. So you got Shiloh, and right down below it is Jerusalem. Shiloh basically is right in between the land of Shechem and Bethel, right in between. And they're all pretty close together relatively, but that's where they're located. So once again, Elkanah is from the lineage of the Levites. And he had two wives. The name of one was Hannah, and the name of the other Peninnah. And Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. And this man went up out of his city yearly to worship and to sacrifice unto the Lord of hosts in Shiloh. And the two sons of Eli, Hophni, and Phinehas, the priest of the Lord, were there. So they would have been journeying once a year to the tabernacle located in Shiloh. In the book of Joshua, we're told about how the tabernacle is set up there, and it stays there for a long, long time, even through the book of Judges and all of these. Samuel being the final judge of Israel before their first king Saul, then this is the place that he would have dwelt most. And as you'll see right here, we do know where the remnants are today. Archaeologists in this, I believe this is IsraelBreakingNews.com, if I'm not mistaken. Archaeologists, we found Shiloh Tabernacle. The findings to be displayed this week at Shiloh include hewn holes in which wooden beams could have been placed. And as you can see right here is the layout of where the ancient tabernacle was. It's perfect size, perfect measurements, got everything, even the stones are still standing. You can even see the layout of it right here. They still have it. They have enough evidence even to know how it was laid out. Here's where the east gate would have been. The ark would have been inside of the Holy of Holies right back here. Fascinating, fascinating. So this man Elkanah, a Levite, located in the land of Ephraim, he has two wives. Now that's a frowned upon thing. But these were also in the days of judges, okay, before the time of their first king was given. This was in a time when every man did that which was right in his own eyes. And yeah, it's just a terrible time of disorder, which we'll see right here in a minute. And when the time was that Elkanah offered, he gave to Peninnah his wife and to all her sons and her daughters portions, speaking of the ceremonial feast that they would have after the sacrifice. But unto Hannah he gave a worthy portion, for he loved Hannah. But the Lord had shut up her womb. Just to show his grace and favor towards Hannah, he gave her more than he did everybody else. And Elkanah's like this. Like the whole time you can tell he's a good, godly husband. And her adversary, meaning the woman that he lived with, the other wife of his, which kind of goes against what I just said about his character. I realize that, but I don't know. And her adversary also provoked her sore, for to make her fret, because the Lord had shut up her womb. So that would have been very, very difficult living. And this is the reason why it's one man, one woman, nothing else. Okay, like children, yeah, like you can handle the children, but this right here, too hard to handle for anybody. And as he did so year by year, when she went up to the house of the Lord, so she provoked her, therefore she wept and did not eat. It's, it would be very, very difficult living in a house with someone in whom the Bible labels as your adversary, your enemy. Not only is she barren, not only is that a plight upon her that most women can't hardly bear at all, but she's also got to deal with this like the entire time. And mad, that's, I don't know. And you may be wondering to yourself, why would God give this woman children and this other woman, in whom we find out is a very godly woman, he doesn't give her children? Well, I'll get to that right here in a second. Then said Elkanah her husband to her, Hannah, why weepest thou, and why eatest thou not, and why is thy heart grieved? Am not I better to thee than 10 sons? Couple of points to be made right here. First of all, let's not pass up on this her not eating deal, okay? I'd mentioned how whenever, like in the book of Esther, whenever she asked the people to fast for her and pray before she goes in to see Xerxes, well, a fast is not eating, it's staying away from the world as much as possible. Anyway, we see right here in the same situation, but remember what I talked about, how these very, very depressed people, they become saying, I've done it myself. You get so depressed that you just don't even want to eat. That is the best time to pray to God. And I'm reiterating what I said in the Esther video, but this is the best time to pray, as we see right here. And she, if you'll notice how she's at church, basically. She's at like the yearly great festive church, and she is still sad. The problems from home follow her to this place. And we see this an awful lot with, I've seen this countless times with church members. They come in and they have this broken heart. Everyone else around them is just festive, but they're just broken, absolutely broken. And this is the best time and the best place to pray, as we'll see even in this chapter. But also, let's not pass up how Elkanah, you can tell he can't. He might be a little tone deaf or something. He can't read the room very well. He says, "Am I not better to you than 10 sons?" This is the problem with most men. Whenever women have a problem, we don't know where you're coming from with this. And it's a good analogy, I guess, would be if a woman is wanting to fly overseas and she's wanting to fly, then you go out and you buy her a car. And then she says, well, I don't need a car. And then you say, no, it's the nicest car on the lot. And then you go out and you buy her like a motorcycle or, a horse and carriage and all these things. And she says, you're not even touching the problem that's messing with me. That you're not even addressing the issue. You can buy me all the nice cars in the world. We need a plane. We need a ship. I need to get across seas. And see, you're not even taking, you may have all the good intentions there, but you're falling short on the main problem at hand. So Hannah rose up after they had eaten in Shiloh, and after they had drunk. Now Eli the priest sat upon a seat by a post of the temple of the Lord. It becomes known later on to us, the readers, how Eli's sons are very, very corrupt, and they're very evil young men. But I wonder if it was known to everyone else. If you'll notice, Elkanah, he goes to the sacrifice and he does it with a godly heart in the right manner. He goes there and he doesn't care what the rumors are, if there are any rumors. But let's just say that he did hear about how evil that these boys were. These were in the days of Judges, so evil was known to be throughout the whole land of Israel. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes, remember, as it states in the book of Judges. But if he knew about the rumors, notice he doesn't go there and he doesn't care who the priests are. He doesn't care. He still does his work. And people in churches should take heed to this. Don't go for the preacher or the priest or whatever. Well, I'm not going to give my tithe to him. You're not giving your tithe to the preacher anyway. You're giving it to God. Are you not? Because in the book of Malachi it says you rob God by not giving your tithes and offerings and such. And I've spoke before about your how you can tithe, different ways to tithe. If you're not able to give money, then give your time, give your servitude, help out, clean the church, help the poor, do things away from the church that are godly. Do other stuff if you can't afford it monetarily. But notice he doesn't pay any mind to these men. He still brings his sacrifice. He still does what is pleasing to God. But Eli sees Hannah praying, and she was in bitterness of soul, and prayed unto the Lord, and wept sore. And she vowed a vow, and said, O Lord of hosts, if thou wilt indeed look on the affliction of thine handmaid, and remember me, and not forget thine handmaid, but wilt give unto thine handmaid a man child, then I will give him unto the Lord all the days of his life, and there shall no razor come upon his head. What she's meaning is, I'll dedicate him as a Nazarite from the beginning of his birth all the way through his entire life. Usually, a Nazarite was someone who would dedicate their life to God, and they would refrain from drinking and mingling with the world, getting around dead bodies, and they wouldn't cut their hair or anything. Samson was a Nazarite from birth. He and Samuel share in this, but Paul the apostle also took upon himself this time of dedication. Usually, it's only for a specific time that you do this. And Paul, after he would get done, he would shave his head and dedicate the hair as a sacrifice unto God and such as. So, but we see this is from birth. So not only is Samuel part of the Levites, but he's also being dedicated as a Nazarite from birth. So this puts him in a whole new class of dedication. And it came to pass as she continued praying before the Lord that Eli marked her mouth, meaning he's observing her mouth, like, because he can't hear her voice. So he's looking at her lips and he's like, what's wrong with this woman? Because it was, I guess, more common to pray out loud. I rarely ever pray out loud. Rarely ever. And we see how this is one of the most powerful prayers in the entire Bible, and he can't even hear her. So the broken heart, whenever it can't vocalize, the Spirit speaks. Now Hannah, she spake in her heart. Only her lips moved, but her voice was not heard. Therefore Eli thought she had been drunken. There's an awful lot to say about just this one instance. I'm not going to say an awful lot, but the times were so bad that apparently people were getting drunk even around the tabernacle, the place of sacrifice and ceremonies. Clark, the old theologian, he once said about this moment, the fact that Eli supposed her, Hannah, to be drunken, and the other of the conduct of Eli's sons already mentioned, proved that religion was at this time at a very low ebb in Shiloh, for it seems drunken women did come to the place, and lewd women were to be found there. So there was all kinds of this sinful acts, right? I believe it or not, I've been around churches where this is a common thing. It's like an unspoken thing where people show up and they do these ungodly, smoke weed right outside, even engage in fornication at the church. I've heard about several instances where that happened, and people just they don't care. They don't fear God whatsoever. And Eli said unto her, How long wilt thou be drunken? Put away thy wine from thee. They believed that this was maybe even a common custom, that people would get drunk after they'd give the sacrifice unto God. Then they would get drunk. And Eli, whenever you first read this and you don't know about the disorder in Israel at this time, it's very common to get angry at Eli and say, hey man, back off, she's just praying. But I would say that he's seen drunkenness all the time around the tabernacle. I'd say that it became a common occurrence around there. But he says, How long wilt thou be drunken? Put away thy wine from thee. And Hannah answered and said, No, my lord, I am a woman of sorrowful spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but have poured out my soul before the Lord. Count not thine handmaid for a daughter of Belial, for out of the abundance of my complaint and grief have I spoken hitherto. She says, Don't consider me a devil worshiper, which may have been another common sight. Then Eli answered and said, Go in peace, and the God of Israel grant thee thy petition that thou hast asked of him. So you can see in this verse how Eli is kind of repentant about it. He says, "Oh, okay, I thought you was drunk," but he tells her, he says, "Go in peace, and may God grant you what you were asking." Now you have to wonder, was because she gets pregnant right after this, okay? Like they go home and then she gets pregnant. So I believe that she had to go through these times of trials and all of this that we've already discussed in today's lesson. She had to go through these times of trials first and become completely broken. This is the kind of person that God loves to hear from the most, the broken and contrite heart and spirit. And it got her to a point where she was so desperate to have a child. Now, notice she was barren, and her enemy, her adversary, who lived in her very home, she had to see her kids run around all the time. So, completely heartbroken woman, to the point where she says, I will dedicate my son to God forever if he just gives me a child. And I believe that God was waiting on that. I believe that, or at least God's will to come in and happen and to open up her womb. I believe that he was waiting on that heart to come out. And then he said, okay, this is perfect. There you go. It just seems like that to me. And I also do believe how God, he spoke through Eli. Eli may have not even known it. That may have just been a common thing for Eli to say to people whom were praying, but that was definitely God speaking to her, because immediately her spirit uplifts. And she said, Let thine handmaid find grace in thy sight. So the woman went her way and did eat, and her countenance was no more sad. That goes to show you, once that your prayer has been answered, it's okay to eat. It's okay. It's okay to get happy after all that. And they rose up in the morning early and worshipped before the Lord, and returned and came to their house to Ramah. And Elkanah knew Hannah his wife, and the Lord remembered her. Notice this, and the Lord remembered her. If you'll recall her prayer, she was like, God, remember your handmaiden. And so it says, the Lord remember her. Remember how the Lord remembered Noah. The Lord remembered Abraham. The Lord remembered the Israelites. The Lord remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The Lord remembers. Now, what that means is not that God forgot her for a time and then he just suddenly remembered her whenever she prayed. No, that means that suddenly her plight is being brought to the forefront of God's sight. God remembered her. Now he sees her. It's just like how Noah, being the only righteous man on the earth, how God remembered him. She shined just as much to God as Noah did at that moment. A lot of depth in this. That'll preach. Probably not by me, but it'll preach by somebody. Wherefore it came to pass, when the time was come about after Hannah had conceived, that she bare a son, and called his name Samuel, saying, Because I have asked him of the Lord. Samuel means heard of God. God heard me. And the man Elkanah and all his house went up to offer unto the Lord the yearly sacrifice and his vow. The baby Samuel was only probably about 3 months old or so at this time. But Hannah went not up, for she said unto her husband, I will not go up until the child be weaned, and then I will bring him, that he may appear before the Lord, and there abide forever. And Elkanah her husband said unto her, Do what seemeth thee good. Tarry until thou have weaned him. Only the Lord establish his word. So the woman abode, and gave her son suck until she weaned him. Elkanah seems to me to be kind of like a Joseph, Mary and Joseph, and Hannah appears to be a lot like Mary. And but we see how Elkanah is very he's just letting it ride. Well, okay, whatever God wants, that's what we do, and that's it. Okay, God's just he's not one of these tyrannical evil men like we read about. He actually seems like a pretty cool dude. My guess is that Samuel was probably around 2 or 3 years old whenever she finally took him, and that would have been a very, very difficult thing to do. But knowing from the outset, from the onset, that you're going to do this one event would have made it a little bit easier to do. But they're not living very far from the tabernacle either. Remember, Shiloh is located in the land of Ephraim, and they are also located in the land of Ephraim. So it's not that far. That they probably could have went and seen him an awful lot, but it would have made it much easier. And I don't think it's a coincidence that God made sure that they dwelled in the land of Ephraim. That way they could have done this, dedicated their son from birth. And when she had weaned him, she took him up with her with 3 bullocks and 1 ephah of flour and a bottle of wine, and brought him unto the house of the Lord in Shiloh, and the child was young. And they slew a bullock and brought the child to Eli. Now we know that they brought 3 bullocks, or bulls, and so they made the one yearly sacrifice, and then it's implied, they sacrificed another bullock for young Samuel as a burnt offering for consecration of him, to prepare his life. And she said, O my Lord, as thou so liveth, my Lord, I am the woman that stood by thee here praying unto the Lord. For this child I prayed, and the Lord hath given me my petition which I asked of him. Therefore also I have lent him to the Lord. As long as he liveth, he shall be lent to the Lord. And he worshipped the Lord there. And all this took place pretty close to this area right here. Okay, it's amazing how much evidence that we have for biblical proofs. But that was 1 Samuel for today. Hopefully tomorrow we can get into 1 Samuel chapter 2. Hopefully, maybe a couple days. But either way, Lord willing, God of peace be with you. Amen.